Dom.
Hi, Dan.
Welcome to NAS Cafe again. I'm Dan.
I'm Dominic.
It's Dominic from NetAccess, and we've been working together a while now. And well, we've decided to just take our little tech talks out into the world, the real world. Right? And today we're at Simply Italian Bakery, and we're enjoying. I'm drinking a tea. What are you drinking?
I have a handcrafted Americano, and it's delicious.
Anyways, we might dig into some of these sweets. I know if you're ever down on Ottawa Street here in Hamilton, they make great biscotti, and they've got great sandwiches here for lunch, and they have this wood oven for pizza. And they make fantastic pizzas. I like the margarita pizza.
Yes, anything wood oven.
But stop in, grab a coffee, and say hi to the gang here. Everybody's super friendly. And yeah, we're grateful for letting them, or having them let us use their space here just for
It's beautiful.
another little tech talk.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you know what? I was talking to Dom earlier, and I said, what's a great topic that we should really be chatting about? We said, well, what are we focusing on right now? So and I thought I'd just start with that, huh?
Yeah, it's always a good spot. I mean, IT is there's so much in it that we really have to sort of pick some things to focus on and cycle through those throughout a year, right? So right now, at least here at NetAccess, what we're focused on is a few things like the security underlying Windows 11 and what to do with Windows 11 for business. Second one is again, really focusing on security. It's something that we haven't really lifted our finger off of kind of since COVID, but firewalls or network security. And the next one that's kind of, if you haven't done it yet, you're a little bit late to the game, two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, right? So those are the things that we're really focusing on lately.
Cool. Or do you find that people are taking security seriously?
I mean, that's a difficult question. Most of the time, yes. Generally speaking, everybody is a little more aware now, I think, of how risky it is with how many, security-centered sort of news reports are coming out. This person was breached, this city was breached, this countries and huge corporations. So who's safe is kind of the attitude. And I think that's kind of made a little bit of a reality call to everyone saying, yeah, you know what, I really should. And if I haven't, here's our talk to say, let's bring it again back up to the front and say it's a good time right now to take a look at it.
So you mentioned Windows security. So we're talking about the new Windows 11 upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
What's driving that?
I mean, well, Microsoft, right? They just like Android or just like Apple, they want us to do what they want us to do. But I mean, there's a lot of really cool improvements with Windows 11, and particularly specific about security. So the biggest change is that they actually required a physical hardware security chip dedicated that they never had before. Other companies, they did have it. It was just never a mandatory requirement, and it wasn't tied into the operating system itself. So this is the first time where the hardware and the OS are in a new level integrated security-wise. That's what's called a TPM chip. The good news is that you can legitimately say the Windows desktop operating system is going to be more secure than it ever has been. At the same time, it's a physical requirement, which we're finding even computers that were purchased as early or as late as 2018 and 2019, some of them are physically not compatible. So Microsoft is sort of, we'll say upset the world, or as a reaction to the upsetting security affront of the world. They're sort of leading the way, which is going to have to open up the pocketbooks, I think, for more people than
what's the impact of business
anticipated.
With the change?
Well,
it sounds like a lot of hardware is going to get replaced.
That's right. Yeah. So computers that are 5, 6, 7 years old, they're still functioning and they're still okay with the way that a lot of people work. So there hasn't been a real push. I'm saying Intel and AMD haven't really been on the competitive edge for a long time. So it's been just a plateau. Lately, that's changed in the last couple of years. It's big improvements now in performance, but the gist is, I don't want to say a high number, but 75%, maybe higher, of computers are just physically incompatible, where we've never had to encounter that before. I've always been able to go from Windows XP to Windows 7 to 8 to 10 and never have to change a physical hardware. Now, we can't do it. So we're stuck at 10 for another couple of years until, the sooner the better that we can get on the Windows 11.
It's going to force those guys dragging their feet in their computer upgrades, where they've been really dragging.
Yeah.
Finally going to have to go out and buy some new stuff.
It's good, I'll be honest.
I just wanted to know, how is the chip shortage right now that's going on? Is that affecting any of that?
Right. It has been for the last couple of years. And this isn't necessarily a plug, but the latest generation of Intel and AMD processors they've had just generation over generation leaps, kind of way back to the early 2000 era, where we're getting 30 to 50% per generation now every couple of years. But the chip shortage, I think, mostly speaking, as far as commercial desktops, not really an issue anymore. We should be able to get systems delivered within a couple of weeks in most cases, and that's normal.
That's interesting, right? And then you mentioned firewalls?
Yeah. So, I mean,
what's going on with
a firewall is really central to the security of any business network, right? I like to say it's the traffic control cop about who's allowed and what's allowed in and out of the business and network and digital data. So, as a result, a firewall is an adaptive device that needs to stay current, kind of like our antivirus or anti-malware type software. On the firewall itself, it's essentially doors opening up to the internet. So we got to make sure that it always stays current. What I'm finding is generally it's just one of these items that gets neglected quite a bit. It may be a recent model, but the software component and the firmware inside is what really needs to be maintained and kept up to date. And then that's just the minimum. The people that are maybe dealing with more sensitive information and or, I want to say, reliance on the internet for their services to maintain their business, they would be probably most interested in like the next generation feature set of firewalls that can do really advanced scanning, find very, very, we'll say, extremely well designed or hidden type malware that could get past other types of scanners. Well, the firewall is like our main point of defense. That should be the one that captures it. So some of those features may have been purchased but may not have been implemented, right? Or people just didn't even know that that's a thing that should be considered nowadays. And the reality is, in my opinion, every business should have a firewall and leverage the next generation feature set.
What do you find when we do an evaluation of an organization underneath that managed service program?
Good question again. So, I'll say there's two answers. People that have worked with a professional IT organization in the past and those who haven't, right? So in our last discussion, we chatted about everybody's got a friend, Tony or Joe. It's been a friend of a friend that's been taking care of my IT. With no disrespect to Joe, right? But there's a certain level of training that typically comes with, I want to say, leaning towards enterprise security or firewall design, stuff like that. That isn't really exposed in the small or some of the mid-sized businesses, so they just don't know. And their IT guy may not even be that familiar with it either. So what I find when we're doing some audits is there isn't a firewall, and if there is, it hasn't been touched in 3 years. So we're talking about pre-COVID-19 security policies. Things have changed dramatically since then. Right? We need to catch up. So, and those with that have had the professional IT experience or working with an organization, again, it's more frequent that we find a firewall in place, but I do admit it's probably more than 50-50, 50% of the time or more.
There must be a lot of neglected devices out
there. There is.
Old firmware.
This is it.
Standard passwords.
Standard passwords is a big one. Yeah. Yeah.
Not good. Not in this day of age. Like I heard about maybe that's bringing up your last comment there about two-factor authentication, but just recently Uber got hacked through social engineering, and they suckered somebody in through a branded website or something that they had made specifically for the user. They got the person's ID and access through VPN, got on their local network.
Oh, there we go.
So firewall gets bypassed, and there's a lot of challenges in that environment. So what about 2FA? Is it useful? Would it help?
This is the state of affairs, right? So IT is responsible for, I like to say it this way, yes, I'm going to get to your question about two-factor, but IT, we're technically, as doing everything right, we're about, I want to say, responsible for 10% of the security of a network. 90% falls to you, the end user, picking up the phone and saying, yeah, come on in, waving somebody in without seeing their ID, or clicking on that email and away we go. All of our defenses that we've spent so much money on. So the end user is 90% of the risk. IT is, we do our best job, but technically, really, we're only about 10%. And in that 10%, I would say, it's worth a point or two to consider two-factor authentication. Right? So it's that.
What is it? Maybe you could just describe it for
a good idea. So because we know that humans are so vulnerable to just, I want to say, being misled in innocence, in honesty, two-factor is a way to say certain devices, certain services like email or VPN are the two most popular ones. Some others may require it, right? So it's a way to, when you're logging in, check to make sure it's actually a human. Is it actually you? And how do you do that? Well, you think I already know my password and my username. I've already provided that. That's my daily. The second factor is when I have a separate device like a phone that sends me a text message or an app pop-up notification that says, is it really you? Are you trying to log in? And we want to say yes. Because passwords getting lost, right? And all the ways that people can be socially engineered or just sort of manipulated into a way of giving up that information or just using common passwords. This second factor is a secondary defense, another locked door before people can just walk right in. And as such a small thing, I know sometimes there's an impression like, oh man, it's just another thing I have to do now. The reality is, once you do it a handful of times, after a week, it's second nature. And when you see some of the fallout of when you didn't have it, or when a breach does happen, it is comfortably warming to know, at least I got this, right?
And I know talking to business owners that have been compromised in some way, whether it's ransomware or something else that, as a result of some compromise, it's an end user that does take place, and they're asking, how do we protect against our end users? And there's not a lot of awareness about actually security awareness training, but you can actually put all of your team members through a regimented test regime where you're trying to educate them through some fun and games and creative learning, but at the same time test them routinely. And you can measure the response, and you can kind of find out, hey, Mary just is the person that's always clicking on those things. But it's also getting more complex. Like, it's funny, on my phone here today, I'll post the thing here, but I got a thing, it's funny, just in a few hours ago. I'm sending the payment shortly, thanks for your patience. That was an SMS message that I got, right, to try to solicit the end.
Yeah.
I'm getting them daily now.
Yeah.
So, security awareness training and 2FA, I think, would go a long way to help, because that 2FA provides, it's almost like you said, like a human needs to do it. They're trying to make it so a computer can't keep ramming it and do a brute force hack or something else, right? Or if somebody did, like Uber, for example, got socially engineered, the web page then might not know the 2FA questionnaire. It's not something that you would know would be missing. So you might be presented with let's say a Canada Post page that you might be used to logging into. It looks the same, but when you click login, it then asks you for that 2FA password, and then you're expecting it, but it didn't give it. So it starts to bring up some, raise some hairs on the back of it, right? That's right. And then if they didn't apply it, well, they might have captured your password, but you still have the 2FA on the real side.
And in every other case, you don't. And you're hosed.
And you're hosed, yeah. And what concerns me today is losing my cellular number, right? The DID.
I lost my phone.
If you lost your phone, you've lost your ID, right? And then you're into like all the things that you've used for your passwords, for your 2FA. It's a huge pain. Get 2FA. That's the moral of the story. If you're not using it, put it on.
What would you put it on? Like, I'm thinking bank accounts, for sure. Everybody. Every personal bank account. Absolutely.
We have it, actually just looking at it from a corporate standpoint, we have it on anything that's got a customer on it.
Right.
So if there's a customer name, address, phone number, we make sure that we've got 2FA enabled on those systems. So that way it's mitigating the risks that we have that we might accidentally give up some information. There's always human error. It does happen. We've been fortunate, but a number of our customers, we've had to help them out of a jam as a result of them clicking on that wrong email.
Does any example come to mind where we've seen maybe 2 or 3 of these different topics that we were just discussing, whether it's Windows or passwords or firewall and security?
Well, I know that one, it was an interesting one that I got involved with to help a little bit.
Okay.
It was one of our customers that we were doing a network assessment for, and they had a variety of switches, they had a variety of network devices, but they didn't know the access passwords. But we scanned and actually were able to get in every device using the default passwords, or there was no security at all set up on anything. So every switch in the organization, and this is not a small organization, but every switch in the organization, you literally could have plugged any laptop into or used their wireless and gotten on with a default password. And I was just blown away that we encountered that. It's like whoever is doing your IT has increased your risk factor to 100-fold, 1,000-fold by just not following some simple best
What would it
practices.
mean if somebody, like, what translated into, like, pretend I don't know, because I'm not exactly sure, like, standard passwords and having different switches doesn't make sense to me.
I'll just drive maybe one point home because it's the most critical thing. Well, first off, in the insurance industry, it's getting more and more difficult to get cyber threat insurance.
Okay.
And you have to have certain things in place.
Right.
So we just went through this with another one of our customers where we had to roll out a whole DR plan, disaster recovery plan to say what happens in the event of a breach. And having the procedures in place to know what to do. But just to get the insurance now, they had to fill certain hoops now, which means that, well, if you get hacked and somebody does a breach and you don't have insurance, and they delete your data, your risk of business catastrophic failures is very high. 80% of businesses fail within 2 years of losing their data. So if you just think about that, it's thou shalt make backups.
Test them.
And test them. Yeah, and you need to do what you're doing. What you talked about here today. Stay current. Enable your Windows security. Firewalls can't be out of date. You've got to keep your firmware up to date. And then 2FA is very important. Maybe a fourth comment or topic to marry this all together would have been security awareness training.
Mm-hmm.
That would have made for a whole other longer period. So maybe we should talk about that next chat. So thanks for the coffee.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.